Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another webinar in the Staffing Hub webinar series. We're excited to have you all here today with Avionté for the financial impact of candidate-centric staffing, maximizing your return on investment with customer experience technology. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions at all, you can drop those into the questions panel and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. We will also send out the recording following the broadcast. And to begin, just a little bit about today's presenter, Christopher Ryan. Christopher Ryan leads the strategy and marketing functions for Avionté. He brings more than 3 decades of consulting, thought leadership, and corporate experience in human capital management. Chris came to Avionté from ADP, where he served as the VP of Research for Strategic Advisory Services, and has also written and spoken extensively about part-time and temporary workers, employee retention, gender pay equity, and emerging trends in compensation. Chris, take it away.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. So today I thought we would start our webinar by talking a little bit about what CX technology is, customer exchange technology, and I thought the best way to do it would be with a story, and there's nothing better than a personal story. So I was attending ASA Staffing World in Denver, 2021. Maybe some of the listeners on this webinar were there. I got there. Now I want you to picture this. It's 4 in the afternoon, Mountain Standard Time. I'm 8 hours, 3 airports, 2 time zones, and a $45 cab fare from home. There was a 2-hour wait for Uber, so I took a cab instead. I get to the hotel, and there are 4 tired travelers in front of me who are waiting to check in. There are only 2 people on duty to check us all in, and then I see this small sign that says, bypass check-in, use your Bonvoy app. And 3 minutes later, my phone that I'm holding in my hand is opening my room. And when you think about that exchange, that is an example of customer experience technology. Now, as we reflect on this, and it's much easier to think about customer experiences when you're looking at another industry outside of staffing first. So, one of the things that's very interesting is how you feel afterwards. So let's take a quick quiz. As a customer, did I feel A, helpless, B, confused, C, enraged, or D, empowered and delighted? And the answer is, I felt empowered and delighted. I felt like I actually had some control over my time in my day after 8 hours of having no control at all. Now, what about those 2 associates who were behind the check-in counter? Do you think they were engaged and excited by all of the tired, weary travelers? Were they excited? Do you think they were referring their friends? Were they afraid that technology would take their job away? Or D, were they resigned and wishing that more people would use the app so that their job would be a little bit easier? So I think that the point I would make here then is, how should we be defining white glove service? Well, at a resort hotel, does it look like A, B, C, or D? And I think the answer there is it's going to look more like D than it is like A or C. Let's step back for a moment and ask about staffing. Well, job applicants at a staffing firm today, are they experiencing A, or are they experiencing B and the rubber glove that we showed? So that begs an interesting question. Is self-service bad service? Well, from a consumer standpoint, what's important is empowerment. Can you take action when and where you want to? Is there a progression? Am I receiving feedback on my progress? Is there completion? Is it decisive and once and done? Is there anxiety and uncertainty around the wait time and social obligation? Or am I able to move on to something else very quickly? So from my standpoint, I was perfectly happy to help myself And in fact, self-service is very empowering. From the staff's viewpoint, a great consumer experience makes for a great work experience. It eliminates rote and low-value work. It increases productivity. There's the potential for higher personal income if you're able to serve people in a way where they may tip you, or you may be doing something very rewarding. There's more high-value human interaction associated with that. So one thing that's very important when we look at the lessons learned from other industries is that industries that have invested in customer experience technology, and whether we're talking about Carvana for automotive dealerships, if you're talking about Expedia for online travel, if you're talking about the difference between an an iPhone versus a BlackBerry, if you're talking about real estate, what's very clear is that firms that excel at customer experience technology have experienced 5 times the compound annual growth of lagging companies. Moreover, revenue growth for these firms comes from the loyalty and lifetime value of those customers who enjoy that experience. Disruption, in each case, this unique combination of technology and human factors makes a difference. And what's most interesting is that the resistance to change, the resistance to adopting some of this newest technology actually came from incumbents within the industry, not from customers, but from people who are used to doing things in one way rather than another. And then finally, there was a lot of consolidation. Many smaller players got eaten up or went out of business, while certain other players grew very, very rapidly. And the industry grew very rapidly overall. So some very important lessons. So let's step back for a moment and say, well, what about staffing and what's possible? And I think, as we reflect on, the labor shortages, the big quit, everything that's going on currently in the marketplace, we need to ask ourselves as an industry some very tough questions. Why do we make it so hard for people to find relevant opportunities, to apply, to get hired, to set schedules, to show up, to get paid? Why can't the employment experience be as simple as ordering from Amazon? And I know that's a slight platitude. Hiring is a little bit different than than buying a product online. But the fact of the matter is that we have a new generation of workers who are used to digital transformation and digital commerce, and they're expecting that the employer, whether it's a permanent employer or a staffing company, is going to use these same technologies to make their life easier. When you look at staffing and the history of staffing, one thing is very clear. Employers were the customer. And even today, ultimately, who pays the bill? It's the employer clients who are paying staffing. But, things have changed a little bit. Whether you say, what was a job board? Well, it was made of cork. Automation was a telephone. The ATS was a Rolodex, and so on. And things have changed a lot. Today, it's possible to have a digital staffing requisition, automated job boards, cloud-based software as a service. You can have an ATS to select, contact, interview, onboard talent remotely. You can do automated scheduling. You can use an employee, a pay card to pay an employee, or even consider same-day pay. Ultimately, though, it all comes back to, can you create, a convenient, hopeful, delightful experience for someone when they're applying for, employment. And it really comes back to talent's expectations. Do you have one place where you can apply for work online from a mobile phone, be pre-vetted for jobs that you qualified for, have a profile so people don't contact you about a job unless it fits your profile, get updates on new opportunities, be able to lock in a schedule and confirm your availability on your time? One of the most interesting aspects of talent is that we mostly operate staffing firms, during the daytime, during business hours, but most people are actually looking for work at night, or on their own time. And so being able to make these services available to people at their point in time is critically important. All of this goes into what we would describe as a customer experience. So with that, let's switch over and do our first polling question for for listeners.
Okay, so the first poll is, what is your top priority for implementing automation to improve your talent experience? And then just select one of the following: custom job boards, mobile app, shift scheduling, onboarding, or communications and engagement. It looks like communication and engagement won out by 44%, followed by onboarding at 28%, mobile app at 22%, and shift scheduling at 6%.
Okay, very good. Okay, so as we as we look forward to the future, and you ask what's happening in the staffing world today, well, there are a number of things. Labor shortages are one of the most important. Everyone's talking about the big quit. Digital markets, virtual competition, dynamic pay, disaggregated work are all very important, you know, uh, things that are happening in the market today. When we asked a group of Avionté clients, what is your biggest challenge for 2022? They didn't say finding new clients. By 80% reported it was finding talent, and it was retaining talent by more than double what was required to find new clients. And I think the implication is very clear. The issue is not finding an employer. The employers will find you if you have qualified people who can help them fill their gaps. So I think that's an extremely important insight in where the market is going. To keep your clients, you need to treat your talent like customers. So whereas in olden times we talked of the employer as the client, now in fact we need to treat the talent as well as the employer, possibly better than the employer, in order to make sure that we can actually meet our business objectives. And because of the labor shortage, it turns out that the most important assets that you have will be the workers that you already have in place today. Uh, we think talent shortages are likely going to persist for the next decade. There are many economic and structural reasons for that. This is something that I've talked about before on other occasions. And we think staffing companies are going to be competing primarily by attracting, retaining, and redeploying their talent. They're also going to be competing with very large employers like Amazon, like Costco, like Walmart, as well as gig employers like Uber and DoorDash for scarce resources. So any automation that optimizes the candidate and employment experience will be critical for success. We also think that within 3 years, most companies are going to need to have a one-stop mobile app to reach, hire, and retain talent. They will need earned wage access, same-day pay, and other such capabilities to retain a low-wage workforce. And if you can't do remote posting, screening, interviewing, and onboarding, that's going to be a standard operating requirement. Staffing companies are not going to be able to scale by hiring more recruiters. The same labor shortage that's affecting everyone else is affecting staffing companies internally. Instead, technology needs to be able to double recruiter productivity by eliminating low-value tasks. The other thing, of course, is that providing a better candidate experience also creates a better experience for recruiters and clients, faster time to fill, higher redeployment rates, less administrivia. Finally, I would say there is very strong evidence that we have that some staffing companies, including specific Avionté clients, are growing far faster than the industry average through the deployment of customer-focused technologies. So to reiterate, the 3 R's for lifetime value: retaining, retraining, and redeploying your talent is absolutely critical. So how do you build a best-in-class candidate experience? And in fact, this is one of the hardest lessons learned, it isn't just about buying technology. It's really about building an organizational competency. And there are 4 pillars that are required. The first is a complete understanding of the candidate experience that you provide today, understanding the steps and milestones, the stakeholder pain points. What is the total transaction time? A company like Amazon may be able, in certain cases, can onboard people in 15 minutes. Very, rapid, transaction time. Is there a way of reducing anxiety? Working at a new job provokes a lot of anxiety. Eliminating low-value work performed internally should go hand in hand with the better experience that you're trying to deliver to the talent. With technology, you have to have a system of record. Whatever advanced new customer technologies you buy today, ultimately it's the system of record that provides you with the data and the intelligence you need to move ahead. And then with that system of record, having the complementary customer experience technologies that will make that experience come to life. Mobile enablement is absolutely assumed. Configurability to support a variety of environments and for continuous improvement. Keep in mind that you don't build a customer experience once and you're done. It's more of an ongoing continuous improvement. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of business intelligence. You need to know your talent pipeline, and you need to link and look at the measurement of talent attitudes and behaviors. What do they like? What do they dislike? What can improve your talent pipeline rate? And then it's about culture. If you bring new technology in, but your company is not aligned with trying to create a focus around the candidate experience and talent, it's very hard to succeed. So leadership and culture redefine job roles. The recruiting job changes dramatically when you start to automate the talent experience. Very, very important that all 4 pillars are in hand in order to execute and to drive to success. That brings up another question, which is, what's more important, engagement or enablement? And I think it's important, when we look at the two, engagement is what drives people to pay attention. It drives attraction. So, a slick marketing campaign can generate engagement. But when you're trying to generate loyalty, you need enablement as well, which means you're actually providing services and tools that help the candidate where they are. The things that help them to apply, schedule, show up, and get paid are extremely important. You can be very engaging, but very hard to work with, and ultimately you will not have the loyalty that you want. So, as I said, delivering a best-in-class candidate experience is a competency. It's not once and done. It's critical for ongoing measurement, and new customer experience technology can be added as long as your underlying technology foundation is scalable. So with that, let's jump to the second polling question and the third polling question.
The first polling question here is, at what stage in your talent funnel do you see the biggest opportunity for improvement? The attract, apply, onboard, place, or redeploy stage? Okay, it looks like attract won by 57%, then onboard at 19%, redeploy at 19%, and apply at 5%.
Okay, and the next poll?
At what stage in the funnel are your recruiters spending the majority of their time? Same choices. So again, attract wins at 64%, then onboard at 23%, place at 9%, and apply at 5%.
So, so with that, now let's talk about what I think is the most important topic here, which is measuring financial impact. And this is really, one of the most difficult areas for staffing companies when they are considering new technology, and that's why we're going to focus in on this a little bit. So one of the biggest challenges, when you think about what a typical, um, you know, P&L statement looks like for a staffing company, um, you have revenue at 100%. The cost of revenue, well, that can vary. On average, it's about 74.6%. But for some staffing companies, especially those in clerical and light industrial, the cost of revenue may be closer to 80% or more. In healthcare, it might be more like only 70%. But somewhere, gross profit is typically going to be somewhere between 20 and 30%, depending on the kind of staffing you do. But then, your SG&A is going to take up most of your profit. And sadly, or what's challenging in staffing is that oftentimes your earnings are only a small percentage, maybe less than 4%. Somewhere generally between I've seen anywhere from 1% to 9% of revenue. So you're already margin constrained. And when people are thinking about buying new technology, those technology costs are typically assigned to SG&A, and they are seen to come straight out of your margins. And what makes it even trickier is that much of the new customer experience technology that is available to staffing companies is not charged on a per user basis, but on a per employee per month, or on a click through. So you might see pricing of $7 per click through, $5 PEPM. It might be based on volume of communications in some way, shape, or form. And so what's tricky is that you calculate your costs and your SG&A based on your current volume of staffing, but it's very difficult to calculate the future benefits in advance for investing in customer service technology. At the same time, if you're the owner of a staffing company and you're looking at the valuation of your business, you may be thinking, hey, my valuation is based on the 24 months of trailing EBITDA. I could just sell my company, and so one of the questions then is, gee, should I invest in technology, which is a little bit uncertain, or should I consider simply being acquired by somebody else to eliminate some of that uncertainty? And so that's the challenge that we face today. So my hope is to illustrate to you a little bit better what the benefits are and how to think about how you would quantify an investment in customer experience technology. So to that end, what are some of the benefits? And this is just at a high level. One of the things that comes from customer experience technology is that you tend to have a higher response rate, a higher completion rate, more people may show up. We have documented case studies where you can actually increase the show up rate by 30% or more for a population, reduce time to fill. Many customers now, many employers are actually looking for staffing companies that have advanced customer engagement technology. You may also be able to get a higher, net promoter score. You may be able to pay recruiters more if they're more, if they're being more, more productive. But let's try and tie some numbers to it. So one of the most important insights here is that ultimately you need to link your talent pipeline to your P&L. And when you look at a pipeline, when you get somebody to respond to an advertisement or a click-through of some kind, an email, there's a certain number of people who are attracted, a certain number who apply, a certain number who are on board in place, and ultimately, then there's the question of who gets redeployed. Well, when you're looking at your P&L, a rule of thumb that we have observed in the market is that roughly a 1% increase in your talent yield, getting people placed, if you can increase that number by 1%, it generally corresponds to about a 0.5% increase in your revenue. So, if you can double your talent yield, you might actually be able to drive your revenue up by a factor of 50% or more. So, let's look at how that might work. So if you look at attraction and attracting people, a lot of money is spent on online marketing, and this is very important. You need to do it, but it won't necessarily differentiate you because the staffing company down the street can do the same thing. The real enemy for you will be friction in the talent funnel. And the fact that if you are just simply contacting people, but you haven't identified who the relevant audience is, if people are only contacted when there's an opportunity that closely fits their profile, you can literally double your response rates and cut transaction times in half. But for the sake of argument, we'll just say a 20% improvement. When you look at job applications, one of the biggest challenges with applications is that people often don't complete them. They get halfway through and then they stop. So you can have a drop-off rate of 40% or more. And having a rapid mobile online application process can literally cut, drop times in half. All else equal, talent yield can go up by as much as 50%. But in this particular case, we'll say your talent yield is only improving by, say, 10%. Then you look at onboarding. With onboarding, you have a new set of frictions. If you have paper-based applications, if somebody actually needs to be at the staffing company on site to sign documents during business hours, that often gets people to drop out of the process as well. And a good rule of thumb is the longer the elapsed time between the acceptance of a role and the actual onboarding, the greater probability of fall off. When you get to placement, well, in many cases, it's simply an art form to get employees to actually show up at a work site and not ghost the staffing company or the employer. What we have seen today, most high quality staffing firms can get a show up rate around 70%. However, there are cases, and we had one in particular that we saw where a staffing firm implemented software that allowed pre-screened employees to pick their own schedules. They were literally able to fill 50 slots automatically, taking hours of recruiter time away, saving hours of time. The individual workers were provided with reminders. There was a geofence time clock on their phone. The phone had a map that showed them, the address where they were supposed to go, and guided them. And show-up rates actually reached 90%. So when you think about the impact of going from 70% to 90%, the impact on both client satisfaction as well as your profitability would be dramatic. And then when you look at the whole issue of redeployment, once you are able to pre-screen talent, do talent shift scheduling, engage with the workforce, a week before somebody is about to finish a job, contacting them and asking them automatically if they're going to be interested in another assignment, offering the workers same-day pay. These are the kinds of things that can increase your redeployment rate by 30 to 50%. So what I wanted to show here is kind of like a simple before and after, and this is a very conservative model, but one that we've seen, when a staffing company starts to put these things together. Let's say you start by attracting 100 people, 40 apply, 16 are on board, 11 are placed, and 5 redeployed. Conservatively, with the appropriate customer experience technology in place, maybe you can increase your number from 100 to 120. Your application rate can go up by a factor of 10 to 20%, completing the application. Onboarding, it's going to be a little bit higher, and then ultimately your placement and improvement in your no-show rate are such that you're actually getting a dramatic improvement in pipeline throughput, and potentially you have the ability to recycle and redeploy a lot of workers into new assignments. And so what we're looking at here, when you look at this situation, is that we're getting almost a 3 times impact on on talent throughput through the use of these technologies. And what I'm showing here, this is absolutely doable. This is consistent with what we see in other industries, but this is also consistent with what we're seeing with certain best-in-class staffing companies today who have made these kinds of investments and are working in specific areas. So what that means, and as we think about how we're putting together this this technology, is that a 2.8 times increase in talent pipeline correlates to roughly a 40% increase in revenue growth. And what we have seen from some customers who are doing this, they're reporting anywhere from a 30 to 50% revenue growth, and typically anywhere from 20 to 30% increase in profitability coming from their investment in consumer experience technology. So when you think about how you would calculate the ROI, it's very important that you set expectations for your investment. The expectation is that you are going, with this technology, you are going to be driving a fundamentally more efficient and more effective talent funnel. And that's where the real payoff comes from. So while your SG&A is going to go up and may go up by a couple percent based on current revenue levels, your ability to grow revenue over time is such that you will get a significant payback and significant scaling over time, because all else equal, you are going to be able to do a lot more business with the same number of recruiters that you have today. So it's highly, highly scalable. The other thing I want to emphasize here is that if you were to go into a travel agency, into Amazon, everyone now has a customer pipeline, and they study this pipeline very closely. They have business metrics built around the pipeline, and they draw a direct correlation between the P&L and what's happening with their talent pipeline. And that's really the machinery that you need to have in place so that you can continuously improve what you're setting up. The final thing I would say is that, and I want to be very clear about this, technology in and of itself is not a solution. Ultimately, if you decide that you want to make an investment in customer experience technology, you need to be prepared to do significant research around the level of service that you provide today. You need to look very carefully at your technology platforms. And if you have a sustainable and scalable platform on which to build these technologies, you need to think very carefully about your analytics and make sure that those are set up to drive continuous improvement. And you need to make sure that you have a culture in place that will enable your company to ultimately deliver the kind of experience that you want. And this is typically, it's a multi-year journey. It's a longer experience, but our point of view at Avionté is that over the next 5 to 7 years, the staffing companies are going to consolidate, and they're going to consolidate in scale dramatically around the use of specific technologies. We think it's very important for the survival and the health of the staffing community to begin making these investments and to make sure that you are up to date with what employers are doing, what e-commerce is doing, what the rest of the economy is doing, in order to make sure that staffing stays relevant and competitive in the marketplace. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and now I'll take questions.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. A few questions for you to start. When you're trying to create a better talent experience, where's the best place to start?
Oh boy, when we talk about starting, very often what we have seen is that clients are, the clients that I've worked with or seen are often very skittish because it looks like such a large project, and it's very important to start with a few specific objectives in mind. So mapping the entire talent experience. What's it like to be to be hired or recruited by your organization? What is that experience like? What is the total transaction time? So that's one piece. The second thing that I think is very helpful, and it's actually easier for staffing companies, is to start thinking about or making a list of what are all the low value activities that a recruiter is doing today that maybe could be done better through automation. And in particular, any place where there is an exchange of information. If recruiters are involved in the exchange of information, and they don't need to be, that's where self-service and a customer experience, not only are you enabling the talent to do something faster at their own pace and on their own time, but you're also taking work away from the recruiter. So for many staffing companies, it's often easier to think about, gee, how can we take some work off of the recruiter's plate so they can spend more time, building high value, relationships with people. I mean, at the end of the day, staffing is a people industry, and so the job of technology is to make recruiters even more people oriented, if you will, and to do more high value tasks in terms of working with people one on one, retaining, retraining, redeploying. Let's use the technology to do all the paperwork, all the reminders, and a lot of engagement.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you. How do you recommend we help our internal teams embrace new technology?
Well, this is a tricky one. Over many years of going through organizational change, with different clients, I'll be honest. There are oftentimes people get set in their ways and really don't want to embrace new technology, or they have a certain favorite way of doing things. They have a certain pet project. It's really important to get people to separate, from the past. And I think part of it, first of all, helping people see the experience from the eyes of a customer. In the example I gave you around hospitality, there are hospitality moguls who always believed that face-to-face interaction was critical for white glove service and for everything that you do. They never thought to them, using a mobile app to get to your room in only 3 minutes seems a little bit cold. But I think this is where being able to talk to a customer and being able to see, in their, through their eyes, what they experience, that's how you begin to redefine what white glove service looks like, what it means. Very often, the biggest opponents of technology or embracing it often argue that they're already providing white glove service today, when in fact they're simply making more work for both the candidate as well as for the staffing company.
Okay, thank you. Another one here. What are biggest pitfalls or risks when implementing technology for a talent experience?
I would say there are several, but it comes back to leadership, leadership, leadership. If you're going to do something like this, you can't do it halfway. It's binary. You either make the choice that this is an investment you're going to make and you go all in, or you step back. The single worst thing you can do is try to create a customer experience, but you're not really committed to it. You're only going so far, and the results show that. People, some clients, some staffing firms never get to the full value of their software because they're never fully using it. They're never fully committed to it. So leadership is important. Having a really good business and technology partner, whether you're working with an expert consultant, whether you're working, with a technology firm, you need to talk to external people who have gone through the journey before and can help you go through that journey and advise you on the way. The third thing I would say is don't assume that the technology is going to do all the work at the front end. The technology is only as good as the organization and the execution behind it. And finally, I go back to analytics. You have to be able to measure the difference in your pipeline or you will not know what you're doing. At the end of the day, the reason to go into candidate experience technology, the reason to build that better experience is to get talent throughput in the pipeline. And so you need to have metrics, baseline metrics that are set up on day one. What do we do today? How many people come in the door? How many apply? How many are scheduled? How many show up? How many quit? How many redeploy? You need baseline metrics. And then you need to have a relentless focus on how you can improve those metrics, in part through the redesign of the customer experience. So it's absolutely essential that you have that holistic view and then tie it back to the P&L. Because at the end of the day, if management doesn't see the linkage between what you're doing with the customer experience and the business outcome, you're not going to have the support or focus that you need from the business over time. So those are the things I would say there.
Okay, and Chris, you kind of already touched on this already, but what data points would you use to know if your strategy is successful?
Again, and every staffing firm has a slightly different secret sauce and a slightly different way of thinking about their talent pipeline. But I think beyond the core analytics measures, there are a couple metrics that I particularly like. One, going beyond the redeployment rate is the lifetime value of revenue generated by your average employee or your average recruited contingent worker, whatever it is you're placing. At the end of the day, the lifetime value of the acquired employee is really valuable metric because it indicates it's a measure of loyalty, it's a measure of profitability, and it ties directly to how well your strategy is working. You can drive higher revenue temporarily by trying to recruit the daylights out of the market, or you can try and drive higher revenue by using the workforce you already have more efficiently and then adding new recruits to that pool over time. And if you can get workers to stay for 8 months or 9 months versus 6 months on average, that effectively you're increasing the total size of your talent pool by 50%. That's a recipe for profitability. So those are the things that I would look at. Also, something like the NPS score for recruiters or the NPS score for a staffing company, referral rate. Those are all indicators that you are driving loyalty and that you are building a better brand in in the workplace.
All right, thank you so much. And that does wrap up our questions for this presentation. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Chris, for the excellent presentation. Everyone, keep an eye on your inbox for the recording of the event, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.